Hello friends and welcome to another video lesson from DBOS Talks. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click subscribe and click the bell so that you can be notified of new uploads. In this video, we'll be learning why in Windows sometimes less can be more, less is more. So the first one we'll be looking at is file size. So it's quite obvious, but you can see. We're looking at a file here, which is aptly called big file, which I've highlighted. And if you will look on the right side, it has a file size of 14,000 kilobytes, which translates into 14 megabytes, meaning a big file. It's a big file. Okay, if we try to open it using the Windows default text editor called Notepad, it will be a struggle. So I will try to open that now using Notepad. Right click and then open with, I will choose Notepad. And then you will see it will take a while just to open that file. It is a recipe for disaster, actually. It is an accident waiting to happen. Okay, it finally opened, but you can see it's a struggle just to open. And it is supposed to be something that should happen naturally, very quickly, because you are, after all, going to do some work on it. Your work is not just about opening files, but really working on the file itself, right? So, simple thing of opening this file is really a struggle. And then now you can see it's even, okay, it's taking a while. You see, it is saying not responding. So I close this now. So you can see the obvious consequence of having a very big file. All applications, regardless of the application, all of them have a limit on, in terms of the file size it could handle. It always has maximum one, because it is using RAM, it's using memory whenever we open that file. Okay, so that's big file. Now let's just say you're saying you have no way around this. So how can you go around this situation? One is you can revisit the file, open it, and then see the contents. Can it be condensed? Can you make it shorter? Can you come up with maybe get rid of redundant information? Can make use of universally acceptable abbreviations or acronyms that could shorten the content a little bit. If in any case, you can see there's no magic bullet to reduce the file size, then the next best thing you can think of while thinking for a real good one is to break up this file into 2 or more smaller ones. Okay, so once you break this into 2 files, at least you have 7 megabytes in one file rather than 14. That's a big improvement already. So how do you do that? It's simple. Of course, you will make a copy of this, put the first half in the first file and the second half on the second file. And then you should come up with a naming convention for the file name, which will remove any ambiguity, meaning anybody who sees the files will automatically recognize them as being related to each other. How? Let's just say if the file name is big file, you can rename the first one as big file underscore 1. And the other one you can rename as big file underscore 2. Up to you, as long as it is something that will be understandable. Somewhere down the road, years from now, it will still be understood what it is. Okay, so it's just a workaround, breaking it into 2 files or more files. Okay, that's number one. The second, in the topic of less is more, the second thing we should be learning now is this. Wait, give me a second. Depth of folder structure. Okay, so we know what a folder is. It is a container of files and can also be a container of other folders, like a subfolder. So the depth of a folder is very important. If you go too deep, it's really bad, right? Sometimes having multiple levels of folders can be avoided. Bear in mind, however, that you shouldn't make it, too deep. Let's look at the folder structure of this current one we're in right now, C / global. That's the folder. Let's explore the structure. There's a folder called IT, I'll go into that. And then there's another one called software, I'll go there. And then there's another one called development. And there's another one called in-house. And then still there's another one called agile methodology. And then there's another one under it called Scrum. And then there's one more, it's called deliverables. And then I'll still go into that. And then finally, I see some real files, which I am interested in. Now, but you will see that before we got to this point, we had to navigate our way through this labyrinth of multiple levels of folder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know how many, but it's really a lot. And I'll tell you what, in a real corporate world, IT or not, you will really encounter this kind of situations wherein you have so many levels of folder in the structure, and sometimes it could not be avoided. Sometimes it was just made that way out of it was there was it will take time for them to think of another way of to making it less deep. Okay, but remember that having a too deep folder structure is really bad. Now so we can think of couple of disadvantages. One is it will take longer to navigate through it to get to the file that you need. This is also prone to a file or files being copied to the wrong folder when you do a drag drop, or even when you do a copy paste with your Control C, Control V, and or with the right click. And then when you're looking for a file, it could also potentially be a source of frustration because you don't know where the file is. If you don't remember, was it here in this folder, IT? Let me just, okay, I'm gonna stretch this. So you'll ask yourself, well, is it here? Where's the file? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Here? My goodness. So there's so many locations, potential locations for the file, unless you really know the file by heart where it is. So it could be a source of struggle. Now, if it really could not be avoided, one thing you can do is you can identify the most commonly accessed folder here in the structure. Which one is the most commonly? If you look now at the one we have, okay, never mind this global because I've just put some down in files over here. But if you go into the IT folder, you will notice there's nothing here but a folder. There's no file, just a folder. If I go inside that, there's no file, just a folder. If you go into this, there's no file, just a folder. So it's a folder, there's no file under it, inside of it. Same here, no file. So in this example, I could easily say that the most important folder is the one called deliverables, which is our present location. So what I could do to get around this situation is to create a shortcut it lets you go straight into this folder. Instead of navigating through this multiple levels of folder, I could go straight into this folder, which really contains the files, not just a folder, but it really contains files. So what I'll do is I'll right click on that folder, and then I will say send to desktop. And it creates a shortcut, right? Which is this one. And then what I will do next is just to double F2 on that, edit, rename, remove the word shortcut. So it's shorter and it's not confusing. Okay. So now you have a shortcut, which if you double click will send you straight into this location instead of double clicking your way to this. Okay, it will save you a lot of time. So that's a workaround. But in any case, it can be avoided. Then you have to avoid a very deep folder structure. Okay, that's point number 2, depth of folder structure. The next we'll be learning is this. File name length. Now again, let's go into the folder called deliverables where we are right now. I'll go inside. You can see this file called some long file name 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 2022, July 28, and then V2, which probably means version 2. It is very descriptive, it's very unique, it is specific, but it is too long for its own good. Okay, so while you are trying to aim for that file name being specific and unique, and yet it defeats the purpose if it's too long for its own good. So you can think of ways how to shorten the file. You can think of a naming convention, file naming convention, which can be understood by you and especially by people who are also getting hold of this file, which comes from you. It could be an internal naming convention of the company or of the team. And I can give you an example. Okay, let's just say Let's just say if you're dealing with report files, you can call them either rep, uppercase or lowercase, rep or RPT instead of typing report. So that's an example. So you can come up with your own file name convention, and then you can come up with your also own standard structure, right? Example, if it is a rep, I'll make it lowercase RP, or you could start it with a year, maybe 2022, and then the month, maybe 07, and then the file type, you would say rep, and then something specific in here, the result. Yeah, so you can come up with some kind of file name convention which could be understood by you and by teams that you are interfacing with. Okay, that's a workaround to the situation of having a file name which has a very long, a file which is a very long file name. Okay, so that's point number 3. The fourth one is this, the number of desktop shortcuts. Okay, so let me just open. Okay, so I have created a dummy illustration of a desktop which has too many shortcuts. So we know the obvious benefits of having desktop shortcuts, which is obviously to have a shortcut, a shorter way to getting to a file or an application. However, having too many of them defeats the purpose. It will be like looking for the proverbial needle in a haystack, if you know what I mean. So we're now looking at an example, a bad example of having too many desktop shortcuts. And it really is becoming a source of confusion rather than a source of convenience, isn't it? The key really is to maintain only the essential ones that you need, the ones that you frequently use, so you can identify, because you know it better than I do, because this is your work, it's your desktop. Then you identify which of these are the ones you most frequently use. I mean, let's say daily. You identify the ones that you use daily, and then you put them in one corner, maybe on the upper left-hand corner of the desktop. Those are your the ones that you use daily. Okay, if you still have a lot of real estate left in terms of desktop space, then you can go to the next priority set of desktop shortcuts, maybe the ones you access on a weekly basis. You can go and take this kind of strategy to shortlist and prioritize your desktop shortcuts. With that, you will be able to avoid this kind of situation wherein it's a deep hole of having too many shortcuts, that every time you have to use one, you have to look for it. It's really a very bad way of working. It kills your kind of time, it kills your productivity, and it could make you be prone to errors. Opening the wrong file, opening the wrong application, and it also kills your time. Okay, so the key is to maintain only the essential ones. Okay, so in this video, we have learned 4 different things in the topic of less is more, being minimalist while working on Windows. First one is file size, looking at the file size, being aware of the limitations for all applications. All applications have limit in terms of the file size it could handle. Second is the depth of the folder structure. It must not be too deep. Okay. And I also showed you a workaround in case it's unavoidable. You can create a shortcut to a very high frequency kind of folder. Third is this file name length. It's an obvious thing that we need to take note of. Having a file name which is very long, like this one, is a bad thing. It's a very bad idea. It's really bites into your productivity. It's a source, it's a bottleneck. Okay. And finally, the fourth one we learned is the number of desktop shortcuts. It really it's an irony. It doesn't become a shortcut when you have too many of them on your desktop. It is just not the way to work. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I hope you've learned something from this video. And if you haven't subscribed, please click subscribe right now. And I hope to see you in the next video.